Well, there you all are, and welcome in once again on a Saturday night here at the Six Screens Live. Well, we have a program starting. The icebreaker program for tonight, of course, is Barbara Anderson. And of course, you know Barbara. She was an insider at the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses when they were in Brooklyn. And Barbara's coming on tonight, and she's got some really great stories to tell us. And, just to give you an idea, would you ever commit a crime if the Watchtower asked you to do it? Well, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I don't know about you. I know Barbara wouldn't either. But what about you? Would you commit a crime if the Watchtower said, "Look, this is what I want you to do," but you knew it was illegal? There are people that do it. There are Jehovah's Witnesses that follow the Watchtower's orders to a T. But then there's even a force at Watchtower, some of the Bethelites. They would do unbelievable things in the name of crime to further God's kingdom. Well, I'm going to play a little clip. I'm going to play a little clip that I found very fascinating. And it's only a 2-minute clip, and then we're going to bring Barbara on. But the clip has to do with the Gestapo. It has to do with the Gestapo. It has to do how Hitler actually got his Gestapo or his SS people to do everything that he wanted them to do. So I'm going to share this clip. You listen to this and you tell me if the Watchtower doesn't, in fact, do the same things and create the same atmosphere that Adolf Hitler created. So let's share the clip right now. I want you to see it. And it's being shared right now. Let's put it on the voice so you can see it. Let's play it.
1925, the Nazi Party founded a paramilitary organization that became the Schutzstaffel, better known as the SS. The organization was established on the orders of Adolf Hitler to act as his personal bodyguard. Hitler had been released from prison the previous December, having been found guilty of treason in the failed Munich Putsch, and was keen to ensure his safety when attending party functions and events. The SS was technically a division of the longer established SA, but the group's loyalty to Hitler alone meant that over time it grew to be the dominant organization. This came about under the leadership of Heinrich Himmler, who was appointed Reichsführer SS in January 1929. He transformed the SS from a small bodyguard of less than 300 members into a private army containing over 50,000 men by the time Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in January 1933. Membership of the SS was reserved for those men who would loyally and unquestioningly serve Hitler and the Nazi Party, and who met the SS's strict racial policy. Through racial selection of both SS members and their spouses, the Nazis hoped to create an elite community of people with an Aryan Nordic bloodline. The Night of the Long Knives in January 1934 removed any remaining authority the SA once had over the SS. A month later, Hitler formally separated the two organizations, meaning that the SS became answerable to him alone. As the organization grew even further under the Nazi dictatorship, separate SS subdivisions were established within a sprawling bureaucracy. By the end of the Second World War, the SS had responsibilities that stretched from policing and the collection of intelligence to running Nazi concentration and death camps.
Well, I thought you might have found that fascinating because I found it fascinating. And I have to tell you that some of the things that I've seen in this Nazi regime under Hitler is Hitler was trying to create this elite community. And doesn't the Jehovah's Witness organization, the Watchtower, don't they try to do a similar thing with the Bethelites? Now, the non-Bethelites, we've been loyal to the Watchtower too. But the Watchtower always loved these loyal Bethelites, those that they had under their wing. And they would actually ask many of these loyal Bethelites to do things that were illegal. But you know what? People would do it to further God's kingdom and to further the Watchtower. Well, let's bring on our good friend, Barbara Anderson. Hello, Barbara. Did you see that clip?
I sure did. It's a terrible, terrible time in our history.
Yeah, it was one of the worst times in our history, but this kind of, I'm not going to say that all Jehovah's Witnesses are Nazis, and I don't even know if I want to go as far to call the Watchtower a Nazi organization, but I will say there are people in there that really would do anything the Watchtower asked them to do. Now, I know you and I have been discussing things. Of course, you're in the process of putting a lot of notes together for a possible book as you're writing. But many things, Barbara, that you and I speak about, I find very fascinating. And I know our audience tonight will also find it fascinating because our audience, we have a lot of new ones. There's a lot of new people coming out of the Watchtower right now. They're listening in for the first time. And the woman you see on the screen, she's no newcomer to exposing the Watchtower. Barbara was one of the first to really step out and give the Watchtower a black eye. That was back in 2002 when she came on the Dateline program and exposed the files the Jehovah's Witnesses had on pedophilia, on child sex abuse in the Watchtower. Now, Barbara knew this was going to create an issue for her. I mean, anytime you speak up against the Watchtower or become a whistleblower, you are in big time trouble. So Barbara did. She took a big deep breath and she says, no, I'm going on. I'm going to expose these guys because she knew where the bones were buried. Barbara worked in an office where she had privy to examining these files and she was shocked. But she's on here tonight and she's a regular. Well, she has a program here on the Sixth Queen, so we always love to have her on. Now, Barbara, you sent me some notes. I found them very fascinating. I went through them this week, and I never realized. Now, you're willing to come on and expose these things. Some people probably might be hearing some of this for the first time, but you're willing to step forward, Barbara, and say that there are witnesses that would commit a crime for the Watchtower.
Well, I've seen it. Perhaps not tremendous crimes, nothing like murder that I know of. But there were certain circumstances that put people in a position where they had to make a decision whether to tell the truth or do the right thing or not, solely because they were Jehovah's Witnesses and wanted to protect the organization. They lived for the organization. Jehovah's Witnesses, not all of them, but as a whole, will disregard the law if it means a benefit to the organization that they really worship. So I was thinking about the expression, the end justifies the means. People will do some pretty awful things if they think it will get them to a position to accomplish something that they think is good. Many times, these experiences that I saw, that is the kind of thinking that the people involved had. So they believed that, like this one man who knew that taking a Volkswagen, this is many years ago, into South America would cost a tremendous amount of money to pay to get it in the country. And the country was Colombia. And what he did, and I know this personally because when I lived in Florida, he stayed with Joe and I as he was headed down to Miami. We lived in West Palm Beach, and he was telling us what he was planning to do. So he had the Volkswagen. He was driving it down to as far as he could go into South America. And then he disassembled it and he shipped it in piece by piece. That was tremendous to do a thing like that. but it cost little to nothing to do it. He was kind of cagey about this. He saved a lot of money, and he got the Volkswagen to the missionary home. He gypped out the country for the money that would have had to be paid to import the car in. So in his case, he thought the end justified the means. So tearing it apart, sneaking it in piece by piece. And I know for a fact that there were many witnesses on the other side of the border that were picking up the small parts and taking them to a certain place where it would be reassembled. That wasn't as unusual in the mindset years ago of many Jehovah's Witnesses who smuggled in literature to around the world in very devious ways because they felt that the end justified the means. I could tell you some of the means, but it's just, we all know the circumstances. We've heard it for years, how the very brave witnesses in the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, how they smuggled in things into countries where the witness work was outlawed. And they smuggled in literature, basically. So we thought they were heroes. I'm not saying they weren't, and I'm not saying they were. They had a mindset that they were doing the right thing, no matter how they did it. The right thing because they were getting the message to people who would never get it, they thought, unless they did this. So the benefit, they thought, in each of these circumstances, there was a benefit. And what I'm going to talk about is entirely the benefit is to the Watchtower. In the case of this, the parts, the smuggling in of the parts of the, or paying very little to bring a part into Colombia. That I kind of thought years ago, as I said, that they were heroes. So, but the missionaries benefited. So whatever it took, that's how we felt. Well, I had certain experiences while I was in Bethel back years ago. Some of those experiences were food for thought, that's for sure. But I got to thinking about it as a whole. Putting these experiences together, they were all really with the idea to benefit the witness or the organization. And one of them that stands out in my mind is in 1991, that's a long time ago, but I think it was like yesterday to me. I was sitting in the in a chair in the executive office of Don Adams, who was at the time the president of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. I was at that time a trusted staff member of the writing department, and Don's brother, Carl Adams, was my overseer. So I was his research assistant. Don Adams knew of my work and my research discoveries because Carl kept him, and also Joel Adams, another brother of Carl, who was a very important man in the service department, appraised of what I was doing as a research assistant. If you don't know, I'll tell you that Joel was the head of the service department's committee, working then directly under governing body member Ted Jarris. From my dealings and what I know about Ted Jarris, he he bent the rules many times. He bent the rules because he felt, in this case, the same thing. The end justifies the means. The means to get the work of Jehovah's Witnesses around the world, they did whatever it took, even if it broke the law. Not that many years ago, one of the governing body members was smuggled into Russia for a court hearing in Russia that ended up with the witnesses being banned. But he broke the law. He was literally smuggled in, and then he was smuggled out. So, but I know for certainty that he wasn't arrested, so the authorities didn't know how he got there, and perhaps they didn't care. But, we would have done anything for the organization, even to the extent of losing our own lives, because we benefited, we thought. How can you benefit when you lose your life? We get everlasting life. We had a hope of a resurrection. And that hope was like a reality in our brains. And so we would do whatever it took as we had catchphrases, to magnify Jehovah's name or his organization or whatever. That was the most important thing to us. So when I was in Don Adams' office, I had an interesting experience. I think I'll tell you about something to do with Joel Adams. And he's a very nice man. The three Adams brothers, fleshly brothers, were very fine and kind men as far as I knew. I knew their wives and had a lot of respect for them. Joel actually asked Joe and I to not leave Bethel when we had to leave Bethel to take care of my mother. I think I told this at one time. He had a lot of power, and he asked us to stay because of the excellent, that he said was because of our excellent work at Bethel. And he said he knew that we were leaving because of my parents' age and that my mother was disabled and needed care. But he said they could come to Brooklyn, and society would make a place for them in one of their buildings, apartments. But I knew that wouldn't work. My mother and father did not want to live in Brooklyn. They had been from the area when they were young, and they did not want to come to Brooklyn. So I'm telling you this because it shows you the relationship that you can have at Bethel with those who make, with the decision makers. So you see them at another level. And of course, they were just as we're all human. We all make mistakes, and we all have our own personality. Many of us have gems, personality gems. Others have not so many gems, I would say. But we all tried to get along. And but we would see each other like family sees each other. You see the foibles, the negatives, and the positives. Well, the only reason I was in Don Adams' office was I was telling him about how I had a copy of a very important document in my office that his brother Carl gave me. And it tracked the progress of the Watchtower Society's efforts to spread their message from 1879 until sometime in the mid-1940s. I've told this experience before. I added it today again to remind you about this, because in this case, there was an ethical problem here, as somebody wanted to benefit. And so they their ethics were not so good, and because they wanted to benefit. So they broke a rule. And so this paper that I had disappeared from my office, and I told Carl about it. He was not too happy about it. The paper was the result of the work of Van Amberg, who was the Secretary Treasurer of the Watchtower from 1903 until before his death in 1947. It was found in a cabinet in governing body Swingle's office. That cabinet had been in use up till Van Amberg's death, and the material that was in it were put in an archive. And this particular paper was very valuable as far as historically valuable. So Carl wasn't angry. He wasn't displaying anger. He displayed annoyance, and he scolded me. And he said, if I couldn't be trusted with something, then he said, and he entrusted it to me, then Don wouldn't give him any more of things, archival material, if he thought that it wouldn't be taken care of. So I was upset that I lost the material. And when I told Don about that the paper, I must have misplaced it. Maybe it was in other research mixed up in other material, but I couldn't find it. But he was not aggravated. It was Carl who was aggravated, because that's his nature. Don laughed over it because he knew better. He knew he had a lot of duplicates of that paper, and he opened up his drawer and he gave me it. He said, no big deal. So he knew that his brother was somewhat irrational over minor incidents, as I found out after working with him for nearly 4 years. So it came out later that this document, as well as other material that periodically disappeared from my office, was taken by another writing department staff member, who was a beautiful, beautiful young woman, highly trusted. She wanted my job. And I thought that if Carl thought that I couldn't be trusted with important documents, files, and books, he would transfer me out of the department. I told this, I believe, about a month or two ago. I'm telling it again. It's a very long story, a very sad story, but it fits, because this gal, she thought that if she caused me difficulties and behind my back, and over a period of a year she was doing this, she thought that I would be transferred out of the department. So here she was, a servant of Jehovah, serving at the place of God's choosing for this marvelous work. And I mean, this is the way we thought, right? I don't mean to sound like I'm making fun. It was that serious. And yet, she attended all meetings. She expressed herself very, very well. She talked about the organization in a very educated way. And yet, for her benefit, she really tried to shaft me, tried to get rid of me, give me a bad reputation. Would we do this? Well, sometimes we do things that we might not do because they benefit us. And you think, well, surely wouldn't hurt someone. Well, this one was ethically wrong. She was, and apologized and apologized and apologized and cried when it all came to light. And then she was transferred out of the department. So she thought she would benefit, but it was of no benefit to her. Another time, when I was in Don's office, we were discussing something related to my research work on the Proclaimers book. And during our conversation, Don's phone rang, and he excused himself and answered the call. What took place then? I really didn't think negatively of it. I thought positively of it. I said, I'll go now. And I made effort to, like I was going to stand up from the chair and walk out of the office. He told me, no, stay. So he made no effort to lower his voice, so I could hear clearly what he was saying on the phone. And he wasn't saying that much because he was busy writing. After he put the phone down, he volunteered the information. He explained that the call was from a sister at JW who worked at the U.S. State Department. He said she worked in a job where if she wanted to, she could easily access any reports that came into the State Department about situations that involved the activities of the Watchtower Society and Jehovah's Witnesses around the world. And what did this JW do with the intelligence information she gathered? She called Don Adams. It would benefit the organization, but it was illegal. So she broke the law. She would have lost her job if it had been reported. Don said to me, when he was telling me who she was, he said she was invaluable to the work of the society. So they had somebody in the inner workings of the government who would benefit them. I'm not saying that this isn't done by others. Of course it is. Hopefully not everybody, but people do things like this. But Jehovah's Witnesses brag and brag and brag. We all bragged.
Well, I'm not sure what happened to Barbara, but I think Barbara might have froze up on us. But we'll go right back in and see if we can't see what's happening. Hello, Barbara, can you hear me? Well, we got Barbara frozen on us for some reason, but we'll get Barbara right back on with us. But you're listening to Barbara Anderson's program here on the Six Screens Telenetwork, and we're so glad to have Barbara come in and be with us. We'll see what the story is with Barbara. We'll see if we can't get her back into the stream here. Somehow her internet went out. Barbara, let's see if we can't get you on, okay?
I'm back.
Okay, you're back now, Barbara. And I knew you'd come back. I knew you'd figure it out. I know you've been studying with Bill Gates, and he's been helping you. You know.
Yeah. Is that ethical?
Yeah. So you're back with us. So you're all set to roll.
Okay. So this gal at the State Department was breaking the law, and but it was all. We didn't discuss it any more than that, but I thought it was great that she was a loyal JW and was very willing to do what she could do to further kingdom interests in any way, even if it meant breaking rules. That I didn't look negatively at that, but I do now when I think back at all of this. Instead, breaking the law by providing confidential information to the society is not the right thing to do. There was a woman in our congregation, a very active witness in our congregation in Brooklyn, who she worked 2 jobs, and she bragged about it. And the congregation knew it. She always talked about it. she worked for the telephone company, the major office of Bell Telephone in New York City. And she also worked for another company at the same time. Now, how do you do that? She was clever. She had a sort of a higher position, and she had to go out of the office at times and do work outside of her office. And so she explained to me how she did this. And she would do her work in the morning at the telephone company, and at the other company, she would work for them in the afternoon. She got paid full time. Each employer thought that she was busy at the other half of the day doing the work for the company, which she wasn't. Is that ethical? No. Why is it we do things like this, and then we pride ourselves, if we do things like this, and pride ourselves as, oh, we're Jehovah's Witnesses, we're more honest than anybody else around. We tell ourselves this, but yet we have heard of witnesses who have broken the law, so we're aware of that. But the tendency is, unless it's something really big, we will bend the rules. So, especially if it's to protect the organization, that's a main theme here. If it furthered the interests of the Watchtower Society, no matter what it takes to protect or further the interests of it, no matter even if it was illegal. And that goes on even today, to this day. I know it does. Just by the hiding of the child abuse documents, what the society will tell the elders to do, it's not ethical. And the elders know it, but they're doing it for the interest of protecting the organization. And oftentimes they don't protect the victims. They protect the organization. Now, I had an experience, personal experience, where I dealt with a witness in Nashville. In 2007, the Watchtower Society settled lawsuits with victims of Jehovah's Witnesses. There were 16 victims and 9 lawsuits, and they settled for, as far as I know, from the information that I received, $12.5 million. So I wanted to put those court documents on a website. So I formed Watchtower Documents, the website, and I wanted it to be an LLC, a legal corporation, because I was concerned that the Watchtower would figure out how to try to get my website down. And I figured if I was an LLC, I had more protection. And I was afraid, unknowing what would happen, and I was ignorant, I thought maybe they would sue me for the information that I was putting on my website. I knew that they could, if I was a corporation, then they couldn't go after me personally or our home or whatever if they decided to sue me. So this is what I did, the best that I could figure out. So I went to the Tennessee State Department in Nashville, and I had to fill out papers. So the receptionist, there were a number of women when you walk up to the desk. There were a number of women in the background, and everybody was working hard. They looked that way anyhow. Well, one of them came over to me, and she gave me papers to fill out. So I did that. And then she asked me all sorts of questions related to what I wrote on the forms. And she said there were questions on the paper as the purpose of my website. So I said, of course, the name Watchtower Documents surely would clue someone in if they were knowledgeable about the witnesses as to what I was doing. So she was nice, but very cold. And she said, asked me all kinds of questions. So she said, let me back up here. These questions was about the purpose of my website. So I said I wanted to write about a historical figure, and it was a minister who lived, and I told her the years, and I described Charles Taze Russell. And also I said I want to write about his life and about his wife. And I began to be suspicious, so I was very careful. I wondered about her motives for asking me all these questions, and I was giving her very careful answers. She took the papers and she went off, and she told me just to sit in the waiting room. I waited and I waited and I waited, and there was another a friend of mine who was an ex-Jehovah's Witness who was with me, and we waited and we waited. People who were in that waiting room came and went. We still sat there. And after a while, there was hardly a soul in that room. I think there was one man sitting they had rows of seats, and he was sitting up front and we were sitting towards the back. And I became more and more suspicious. So finally, she came out, and she stood there in front of myself and my friend and asked me more questions. And she was very, very sugary, sweet. Too much so, in fact. After all, did other people have to go through this? I knew they didn't. And she was much too nice to me as a stranger who was just filing. All I was doing is filing some legal papers. By that time, I decided to ask her if she was a Jehovah's Witness, and she told me she was. I then asked her questions and found out she was married to an elder. She asked me if I was a witness. I told her I had been. That's all I said. She ignored my answer. I was getting vibes that she knew who I was in relation to the Watchtower organization, because I had been on Dateline a few years before, and this Nashville, and the JWs knew about me. I didn't live all that far from Nashville. And so she was trying to get information out of me that was possible, as much as possible. And then I knew she would tell her husband, the elder, and I also knew he would call the Watchtower. That would be typical what would happen. So she would be telling him about my soon-to-be activated website that would be discussing the Watchtower history. But I had nothing to hide, but I resented the fact that through her government job, this woman was endeavoring to invade my privacy, and this was clearly illegal for her to do this, but she did it anyway. So she used her job to try to get at me. My friend who was with me agreed afterwards that this was way out of order. So in my experience, I have found that if the Watchtower has trained us to do for them what we sometimes wouldn't do for ourselves, what we do for them, and it could be illegal. In my experience, people they do it. And even if they're Bethelites, So when I was thinking more about this subject, it came to my mind about when Joe and I went to Turkey, the country Turkey. And we went to Ephesus. We were in Bethel at that time. And we wanted to see Ephesus, and the rates and the airline rates were very, very low at that time to do that special thing. So the couple, we went with another couple, a married couple who were at Bethel. And we didn't know that they had a laptop computer packed in their in their suitcase. And at that time, the Watchtower was not, or Jehovah's Witnesses were not a legal organization in Turkey. So when we landed and we were in the airport, our luggage was searched and our passports were stamped. So we were departing out the door to get a taxi to go to the illegal branch of the Watchtower. And that's where we stayed while we were in Turkey. But we were, as we tried to depart and call a taxi, two soldiers, military police, and they were garbed, frighteningly garbed like soldiers, and they carried weapons in their hands. And they stopped us. And one of them was very harsh. And he said to the husband of the other couple, he said, you had a computer and you did not list it on electronics that you were taking into the country. You had it in your suitcase. And we want to know, why were you taking this in there? You're smuggling. They threatened us. Well, the fellow, the witness, he told them, he said, pointing to Joe and I, he said, they didn't even know I had a computer. He said, I never thought to tell them. And it's true. We didn't know. It was a small laptop. And he said, so, don't be concerned about them. He said, but I understand why. He said, I forgot to write it down. And he talked his way out of this. They were very close to getting arrested. What they did say, though, they lied. And they said that they were writers. And they would record their experiences on this wonderful trip to Turkey for a book they were writing. But it wasn't true. What they were doing was smuggling in a computer to that small illegal branch. It saved money. Don Adams actually asked them to do this. So it saved a society money, and to send it in, it's expensive to send in electronics from another country. So they thought they were doing a favor for the Watchtower. They made the claim to us that it saved so much in a tax that had to be paid if it shipped in. Joe and I were also given by them, when we started out, an envelope, a big brown envelope. And we were to give that at the branch. And we didn't even know what was in it. And what was in it was talks. Talks that they would give at the branch or to the small congregation that met illegally. And but we were ignorant of what this could mean. If that material had been opened, if that envelope had been opened, it was illegal to bring religious material that was banned into the country. We asked the couple that we were with why they didn't tell us what they were doing, and their response was surprising, but it was true. They answered, "We didn't think you'd go along with it." But that was true. We would not have gone along, not ever smuggling into a branch. I'm not saying that we were better than they. I think we were more experienced with life than they were. And that's just something that we were not into. And not that we understood that the small branch needed these things, but it never entered our mind to participate in that, because we didn't feel that was obeying Caesar. So this is the way we break rules of the country for the organization. I've dealt with lawyers, attorneys for years now who sue the Watchtower over this or that, because the Watchtower they break rules and legal. I know what they do. They skip around rules, the blood rules. They so many things that they should rethink. And this attorney that said to me not that long ago, he said, dealing with the Watchtower attorneys, he said, is like dealing with snakes. What a reputation. These non-witness lawyers think of Watchtower lawyers as snakes who break rules. It's pretty bad when a lawyer calls other lawyers snakes. They don't have too good of a reputation as a whole. I wish it was different, but the lawyers we deal with, we are very confident that they are that they don't do illegal things. J.R. Brown was the spokesperson for the society for many years. I worked with him, knew him not. We didn't socialize with him and his wife, but we knew them. And I found when I dealt with the child abuse that he didn't tell the truth. He was a liar. He loved his position and he loved wealth. And he really didn't have any love of justice. And the new bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses governing body members, they're not especially wonderful people. They love their position. They don't, they say what sounds good, but do they practice it? They only want men at the top who are like them, who circumvent the laws. And they want people loyal to an organization above anything else and who are willing to do anything to protect it. For those who are listening now, you know what I'm saying is so. It's not exceptional in this world where people break the rules all the time, it seems like. Many little rules are broken, but it's only the ones that do great harm that we should be really concerned about. But I want to tell you, Jehovah's Witnesses sure brag about themselves and how they're different than everyone else. And that is not true.
Well, that's what they do, Barbara. This is Rick Farron here at the Control Panel, Massachusetts. But Barbara, I have to tell you, we have gone over. You at least sent me some information that I wanted to share with the audience, and the information comes from the Los Angeles Times newspaper, going all the way back to August 27th, 1987. And it was an article in the paper concerning the Jehovah's Witnesses and about some of the very things we're talking about here tonight, Barbara, on how the witnesses will bend the rules, break the rules, even create a crime if necessary to further the Watchtower organization. But this article appeared back in 1987, as I say. I'm just going to read a little bit to the audience so they can kind of get an idea of what the world actually was thinking about Jehovah's Witnesses, even back in 1987. This is a this is a Los Angeles Times religious writer. His name is John Dart. And Mr. Dart wrote an article. He said, Jehovah's Witnesses are being told for the first time that they should violate confidentiality requirements in medical, legal, and other professions when one of their own members is discovered to have committed a serious crime. Well, that article, even if I wasn't one of Jehovah's Witnesses, that would have got my attention. So here we have witnesses actually being encouraging their members to be involved in activity that could be criminal. Now, right out of the paper, I'm reading it right from the Los Angeles Times. The objective would not be to spy on another's freedom, but to help erring ones and to keep the Christian congregation clean, says the September 1st issue of the Watchtower magazine, an authoritative publication of the Witnesses, Brooklyn-based Watchtower Society. So isn't it neat? I say neat, but I mean wicked neat. It's terrible what the Watchtower does when they're saying, well, we're not really doing it to spy on another's freedom. Well, of course they're doing it to spy on another witness's freedom. But they're saying, no, they're not really spying. They're doing it to help erring ones to keep the Christian congregation clean. I think it's disgusting that an article would even appear in the paper like this. I'll read a little more. I won't read the whole thing. But this is exactly what Barbara's talking about. Jehovah's Witnesses, many of them, not all, I wouldn't commit a crime, and I know Barbara wouldn't. But there are Jehovah's Witnesses that would. Let me continue with the article. You'll find it fascinating. The 3.3 million members, well, that's how many they had back in 1987 when this article was written. What they're saying is 3.3 million Jehovah's Witnesses in America are advised to confront the sinner first. But if he is or she is unrepentant, the sinners should go and tell the elders, and because they want to get Jehovah's divine law correct. So the first thing you do is you go to the sinner. You say, hey, look, I know you have done something against God's law, and I want you to repent, and you go to the elders and tell them what you did, or I'm going to go. That is a terrible cocoon to live in. Who could tolerate such a thing? But many of us did. So what you have here is Jehovah's Witnesses actually being told to violate the law. Now, I'll go on a little bit more here because it got my attention. There was also a man that also spoke up. His name was Charles Teal. He's a professor of Christian ethics at Loma Linda University. And what Professor Teal said struck my attention. He says, I know of no evangelical or fundamentalist community that has the kind of understanding of being faithful to the congregation or breaking pledges in the workplace. This is what Professor Teal said. He doesn't know of anybody else who would ever do that. So then I'm going to give you an example. Then maybe in time we can open the lines up too and talk to the folks. But let me read this here. This got my attention. This is right out of the Los Angeles Times. It says the magazine used a hypothetical case of Mary. a medical assistant discovering that a fellow witness had an abortion. Now, we know in Jehovah's Witness organization, you cannot have an abortion. That's breaking the law. We understand that's a Christian law and that's breaking it. So anyways, this is a hypothetical example of Watchtower is using with Mary, and she's having an abortion. Did she have scriptural responsibility to expose this information to elders? So one of the staff members, who was a medical assistant, Mary, went and told on this person that was having an abortion, who was a witness. And so that's an issue. I mean, that is spying. Now, when Mary took the job, she had to sign a contract that she wouldn't divulge medical information because it was confidential. It wasn't supposed to be revealed. But the Watchtower is saying that you reveal it. You reveal it. Now, right here it says the witnesses advised Mary to before pledging for her job. So they tell you if you're going to take a job, they're saying that you want to be careful pledging for confidentiality in certain jobs, because as a Jehovah's Witness, you will have to break that, even if it means losing your job, even if it's a crime, according to what I'm reading here. So it goes on for it's a lengthy article, but you got the gist of it. But Barbara, that is something that I really wanted to bring up. And I'm glad you sent me that article, because I do remember reading that at the time. And so what we have here in Barbara's discussion is dealing with, would you commit a crime for the Watchtower? And the answer is many would. I mean, even their publications suggest that you do so. If it's breaking God's law, if it's breaking God's law, that's one thing. But it's breaking the law of the land, that's another thing. Don't worry about it. Barbara, that's an interesting article. But we've had people call in here to the Six Screens, not just this article here, but we've had actual medical workers call in on how they would tattle on ones that would take blood. This is confidentiality. This is not supposed to be exposed, but the witnesses would do it.
Yeah, and you don't realize that when you're studying with the witnesses, or if you're raised in it, you don't realize that until the situation comes up. And so the witnesses will lie for their beliefs. They will lie for to protect their organization. That is something that they should give a lot of thought to. Just the recent circumstance here in the area where the young fellow commits suicide, the witnesses were just a week before he committed suicide. The elders were telling him they were getting ready to have a judicial hearing, and he was heartbroken. And they told him, and his wife told him, I said this before on your program here, that he'd never see his children again. He took his life. But it was a sad, horrible thing. None of us can really wrap our mind around what happened. But think about this, how that they gave him a huge funeral. He was very, very well known in the area. And the kids loved him. He worked for the school board. So they gave him a huge funeral. The speaker spoke beautifully of him. They hid it for the sake of the organization. They hid what they were planning to do. They were instrumental in causing him to lose his children. What led up to this was positively obscene as to two of the elders' behavior. And but the community didn't know about it. The blood is on the hands of the witnesses in this case. And yet they come across as, oh, what a loving organization. They'll say anything that they can think of to make the organization look good. And it can be absolutely the opposite of what they're saying. And we know that. And then we forgive the organization. We say, oh, they shouldn't do this or that. You know, years ago, they came up with beliefs that cause people's deaths. And then the time moves on and you forgive them for it. But they say they're a God's organization. And here in this case, there are many witnesses who work as secretaries for doctors, nurses who work for doctors. And they're witnesses who, when they find out about things that information that goes in records at the doctor's office, they are obliged to tell the elders if there is something there that would, they don't know the full facts, but they'll tell the elders about the circumstances this article showed on the woman who was going to have an abortion. And the woman, it was a true story, actually. It isn't in the article, but I know the story. And the woman, they said her name is Mary, but her name is Sharon. And Sharon, she told the elders about the abortion. So the woman went ahead and had it anyway. So she wasn't married, so it was a very difficult time, of course, but it was her responsibility before her maker if she her actions caused the pregnancy. Whatever happened is her responsibility. And so Sharon actually was fired because of what she did. She had took an oath, and she worked with confidential information, and she broke the rules. And so not only was she fired from the job, she was banned, and she was a nurse. She was not a person who just worked in an office. I say just, listen, I worked in plenty of offices, just worked. I'm privy to information, but if it isn't to do with a witness, you never think about it. So Sharon was banned in the entire state of California. In the article in the Watchtower, the name of the article was The Time to Speak When, September 1st, 1987. And the title, it said, Conscience Outweighs Confidence. Witnesses urge faithful to break ethic codes. At the time this article came out, there were also articles that appeared in newsy magazines of insurance companies that were sent to me. And it was a very serious thing when witnesses were working for handling confidential records. Once this information came out from that article in the Watchtower in September of 87, businesses were, if they knew about it, that they had a witness working for them, they were asking these witnesses, putting them on a spot. And then would witnesses lie and say, no, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't betray a confidence, a business confidence, and then go ahead and do it because their conscience is seared by the Watchtower, and they can't live with themselves unless they tell. That's the way it was with us. I know that it isn't really any much better nowadays. And I have had experiences with witnesses who they didn't know that I knew they were a witness. I had one not that long ago here in this area. And that I was asking questions of a woman who was working for the newspaper. I knew she was a witness. There was an article that appeared in the paper that I took issue with and talked to the editor of it. And she knew that article, in fact, I think she was probably one of those that left out important information in the article that made the reason for the article, the theme of the article, it changed the theme of the article, but because it was had something negative in it. So it's a shame that that they do this, but as I said, the end, does the end justify the means? No. We see what this organization is today. We see this organization is small, very small, and getting smaller. When they're put in a position, they break the law. Shunning is an example of human rights issues. They break the law. So what they do is they turn around now in Europe and start their own human rights organization. And they go to the heads of the governments and plead how they're picked on, how that they were the ones who were so harmed by Hitler, worse than even the Jews, to get sympathy. Years and years later, when governments don't understand what went on during World War II with Jehovah's Witnesses. And so nothing's changed. It's a shame that we all were part of this. So some of our lives were very good being part of the witnesses because we didn't worry about world events, because we had assurance that it was all part of God's purpose and that we would have the benefit of living forever for your faithful. And that was not true. So these are some of these, what I related, they're not life and death matters. There are life and death matters in this organization. They've changed their blood opinions over and over again. Education, people have done what they were told at a certain period. It turned out disastrously. And then the Watchtower got rid of the rule, and which they had a big deal on. Remember the organ transplants and couldn't have that. Oh, they made such a big deal over so many issues over the years. And then they changed and move away from it because it doesn't work. And who are the ones that are harmed? But the members themselves of Jehovah's Witnesses they change their lives, they do what they're told, and then they find out that their organization has changed again. And this goes on and on and on. So I'm sorry to be negative about this, but I'm here to tell you about these experiences. I've lived a life, an interesting life, that's for sure. But they're just people who are running really a scam. It's a scam.
It is a scam, Barbara. Well, no doubt. You're really lighting up the screen here. We have a lot of people calling in. Why don't we see if we got anyone would like to make some comments?
Yeah, let's hear their experiences.
Let's see what they have to say. It looks like we have area code 347. Come on 347. Say hello to us. If you'd like to say hello to Barbara, come on 347. You're on with us. All right. If you'd like to say,
can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, shut YouTube off in the background.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, shut YouTube off.
Okay, yeah, I just get.
Go ahead.
Okay, hold on.
Because it echoes when it's on.
I'm going to.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, so the bureaucratic quarantine, I'll call it, there's a color quarantine for the figure. It's theocratically, they okay with it.
Just slow down a little bit. You said something about theocratic. What are you saying about theocratic? Say it nice and.
Theocratic, right?
Well, go ahead. Speak it nice and.
They're being guided by God. It's theocratic warfare. So when they come up with a figure, it's theocratic client cover-up, so to speak. You know, they use a theocracy to come up with it.
Well, they do that. Well, they do that. They do that.
To justify coming up, they'll use the confidential talk of another catch-22 that they use. One other things.
Would you commit a crime for the Watchtower if they asked you?
No way. I will throw them under the bus in a minute.
Yeah. Well, thank you, brother. Thank you, brother, for calling in. Always good to hear from you. Don't you be a stranger. Let's go to Arizona. Let's go to 602.
Hey, Barbara, this is Gilbert. It's just real quick. I love the topic, would you commit a crime? And the answer is no with me, but it's very interesting how Watchtower is trying to play the crime issue. I think it's been about, oh my God, I don't know how many years, over 15. But I had purchased a property for the Yuma County Kingdom Halls, and it was $80,000. So I had raised $30,000 by literally visiting all 13 congregations on a regular basis. And so we ended up having got a private loan from a wealthy Jehovah's Witness, and we only had like $30,000 left over. So $30,000 on an $80,000 property is all, and we were going to pay that off real quick. And we had meetings with all the elders, and I showed them. I go, listen, we are going to pay off this Kingdom Hall lot in 1 year, and in less than 3 years, at the rate we're going, we're going to be able to build this Kingdom Hall and not have a loan. We don't even have to borrow no money. We already had everything going. So, but I had personal problems, and I stepped down as an elder. I was not. I literally was. I was shaking. My body. I was just like I couldn't do it anymore. I had reached kind of like a marathon run at the end. As hard as just being. But this is the thing. The certain overseers came down and they scared everybody. And they put everybody in and said Gilbert was doing something illegal. The laws of Arizona don't, this and that. And so they did this huge audit. But really what happened, Barbara, is they were using their ignorance of the elders to say, we need to do it Watchtower's way, and we need to put the property not in a private congregation like I had done. I had put the property in the name of a local congregation, local elders. Watchtower's name was nowhere to be found. And Watchtower came in and scared everybody. And they actually did an audit, like if I was stealing money and embezzling. And what they found out was that there was $100 missing from the audit. And that was the $100 that I put cash to open up a checking account. There was no receipt for that. But going back to would you commit a crime for the Watchtower, it's a little bit different from what you're going at, Barbara. But they were scaring all of the elders, saying, you're breaking the law, you're breaking the law, you're breaking the law. And the elders, they believed it. They believed that they were breaking some kind of corporation law about raising money as a religious organization. And the Watchtower, for over 15 years, was collecting monthly payments from all of these congregations and stole their property in Yuma, Arizona. Mm-hmm. So that's the crime. So they pointed at you, but there was 3 fingers pointing back at them.
Mm-hmm.
It was, so I didn't commit a crime for the Watchtower, but I thank God now because I see it, that they accused me of the very things that they were doing. And they scared everybody, and it was the ignorance, because nobody says, well, what law did we break? What statute? What Arizona statute law did we break? What IRS statute did we break? And they didn't do that. They just scared everybody. And And that property, I say at least, Barbara, right now, because my brother Jesse, he's a contractor, and he just worked on a similar property down the street, $600,000 the asking price.
Mm-hmm.
This one's a lot nicer. So we're looking at about a $750,000 property that Watchtower has stolen from the local congregations.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We've heard that many times. It's such a sad tale. It really is. Anybody who was an elder could tell the same similar stories. We women, we just attended the meetings. We just believed that the men knew what they were doing and it all was going to Jehovah's praise. We just lived in ignorance and we loved it. But it was duplicitous, and it still is.
It still is, Barbara. Hey, listen, we got the United Kingdom. Come on in, UK. We get you coming in on telephone line. Go ahead, United Kingdom.
Hello, it's Steve here. Hi, Barbara.
Hey there.
Very interesting topic. I think what it's underlined for me is just how very dangerous the Watchtower is, because let's face it, when you're in the Watchtower, you are led to believe, and you do truly believe, that you're working for the highest authority in the universe.
Yes.
And of course, they encourage that. They encourage it head on. They encourage it subliminally.
Yes.
So much so that if you leave, you're not leaving the organization, you're leaving Jehovah. But this is very worrying, because, if you're doing something for the highest authority in the universe, you're prepared to do pretty much anything, really. And when the governing body are saying things like, well, in the near future, brothers, you may be asked to do things that from a human standpoint are not wise, it's worrying. It's very, very worrying indeed, because I'll be honest, I wouldn't commit a crime for Watchtower, but I think I would have done, well, depending on what it was. I mean, I wouldn't have committed murder or anything like that, but if they would have asked me to have done something, to benefit theocratic service, I would have done it.
Mm-hmm.
I think many other people might have done it too. And so that just goes to show that the holes that they've got on people's minds, and what normal people, would or what I should say, what otherwise good people would do, thinking that they're working for God.
Mm-hmm.
That, let's face it, that's who we thought we were working for. And so it just goes to show how dangerous this cult is. Because, they could ask people to do a lot of unsavory things, and I'm sure many people would do it because they think they're doing it for God. And I was just listening to Gilbert and what he was saying about going ahead and doing it and organising and all that. Of course, what he was doing was showing incentive. You can't show incentive in the Watchtower because that's running ahead of the chariot. They like to be in total control, especially when it comes to legal matters. And so if you show any signs of incentive, you're pulled in the back room or whatever, and you're pulled right down. So it's got to be their way or the highway. And very interesting, and it's a bit of an eye-opener. It's made me realise again just how dangerous the Watchtower is.
When I was in Bethel and in the engineering department, these men were all elders. Some of them were engineers, and they had their past. They had good jobs before they came to Bethel. Those folk were, as far as I knew, that they were really straight and narrow, walked a straight and narrow path because they worked outside in the world. They had a lot of experience. And so they didn't cut corners. They really were believers, and they did a good job at engineering, worked very hard. It was those who were raised in it, who had very little education, who came to Bethel and stayed for 20 years. I said, what I saw was so much unethical behavior on their part. the men who would go to the zoning, they had to get permits. That's all they did was get permits for the society. Changing this and changing that in New York, a building, you have to have a permit, even if you change a closet dimension. So that's their job, and they would go into Manhattan, and that we all knew that's their job. Well, what they had done, a number of them, they had another job, and that was to get zoning permits for the congregations in New York City and Brooklyn and surrounding areas. And they would be paid by the congregation elders. It was a secret from Bethel. They didn't allow them to do that. These men were doing this on their own, and they were making quite a lot of money. And when it came out, it was a mess. And so, you know, you can fool yourself that you have strong religious belief, but then when it comes to the advantages that you have and getting more money, you break the law. And we saw that a number of times. I told not too long ago about one of the experiences that I had, and I spent 7 hours with one of the men at headquarters explaining what I stumbled into in engineering. Was I punished for it? No, I wasn't punished for it. I just knew the way things should be operated, and I saw that they weren't, because they were cutting corners because they were making money. And the engineering overseer knew it, but he allowed it. It benefited all of them. So, you know, we made excuses for it. I said, well, we're just imperfect people. Well, then you just admit it and stop talking about you're such an exceptional group, better than everybody else, so everybody should join you in this God's organization.
Well, it's an elitist attitude, Barbara, an elitist attitude. Hey, we have 239, area code 239. Come on, say hello to Barbara.
Barbara?
Yes.
Please tell me about Colin Quackenbush.
I'm not sure what you said. You're breaking up.
Did you say you want Barbara to tell you about Quackenbush? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Well, I knew him.
I'm asking you this is because in the year 2000, at a summer assembly season, I've gotten involved with doing something inappropriate, and my mom wrote to Colin Quackenbush to write the news article about multiple chemical sensitivities, and she did this because she wanted me to be able to attend meetings and field service, but I feel like I'm pretty treating that with disrespect. I'm to show my appreciation for my mom for what she did for me and stuff. What can you tell me about the perfume and cologne and how it affects mental health disorders?
There again, I'm not sure what you said. Rick, can you?
Yeah, what this is? This is a person. His name is Guy, and he does admit that he has autism. So sometimes when he explains things, he has a little bit difficult time doing it. But Guy was actually diagnosed with some problematic difficulties in his life. So one of the things was when he would, some of the Kingdom halls he would go into, they had chemicals in the rugs, the carpet. and this would bother a guy. And you probably know that as well, Barbara. There were plenty of Jehovah's Witnesses that couldn't come to the Kingdom Hall. They had to sit in the back room or sit out in the car because the carpet.
Yeah, allergies to the chemicals.
So he suffered from that. I forget what he called it, but I know Barbara's not a doctor, but what would be the question you want to ask Guy?
Did he say Percocet?
Percocet? I don't think
It sounded like that to me. That's a drug. I don't know.
The reason why I wanted to bring it out because sometimes there's pheromones people wear in perfume and colognes, and that would make them do something that's not normal and not proper. Get attracted to the wrong person and stuff. I think no perfume, but I feel like it's essence. I think that this is appropriate to a married woman for sale, and my mom did.
Well, you're breaking up.
On the tour.
You're breaking up on us, Guy. We didn't get that last part. So you say the chemical allergic reaction caused you to do things that are inappropriate. I mean, I don't know.
Not just clean chemicals, mind you, but perfume, colognes,
wearing perfume,
and fragrances.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happened when you smelled those fragrances?
Sometimes my throat would shut down and be near death and be sent to the hospital. But I'm thankful to be alive now. And I'm thankful for my mom for praying to Jehovah for that. But the reason why I'm saying this is because I still feel conflicted. And I still feel like I'm committing a crime against Jehovah and Jesus and all of that.
Well, why do you feel that, Guy? Why do you feel like you're committing a crime? What are you doing?
Somehow my mom knows I've gone apostate. The Australian Royal Commission and all those other bad behaviors I often get corrected for. No. Knowing what I know now, I'm not going to commit a crime for Watchtower and all those. After knowing about all those bad behaviors and all those scandals I see on the news, no.
Well, good for you, guys. So don't go commit no crime for Watchtower. All right, well, listen, we thank you. You just want to say one more thing before we go on? Go ahead.
The problem is, when I was still at JW, I was still getting myself in trouble in regards to like getting myself fired from a job or two because of my sexual misconduct behavior, doing things out of a sexual impulses. Plus, I never dated anyone. No JW, no one, not even a JW, because I was just trying to live a moral life. I was trying to live in good standing with my mom and my dad and my sister and the rest of the congregation.
Well, I do remember a guy who spoke up before the program about a year or so ago, and you did tell us what your problem was. Is that a specific? Is that a known disease, psychiatric disease, or is that something?
I don't really know what it was, but all I remember is I was being born with environmental allergies, and I was born with autism at 18 months. Differently from all the other Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff, and I do behave differently. I do think differently because I view things no one else would view them, and I still view celebrating holidays as committing a crime.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't look at it that. If you're out of Watchtower, you don't have to worry about that. But anyways, Guy, listen, we're glad you came on. But we appreciate you always speaking up. We appreciate your honesty too. And you just
Yeah.
settle down, and sometime you can come
I'm
on.
getting bored that some JW in my area is going to come and stab me in the back.
Well, don't worry about that. I mean, I know they're backstabbers, but they may not do that to you. So don't you worry, Guy. All right. Now you just settle down now. Don't get too riled up. But we're glad you came on the 6 Screens tonight. Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So anyways, Barbara, I guess I just got a text message in as well when I was talking to Guy that we got, a person wrote me here from California. And what they said here, I want to thank that person very much. The State Board of California Licensing will remove the license of any medical professional, a person who's breaking the HIPAA law of patient confidentiality.
That's right.
It's a punishable crime in the California state. So there you have it. So with the Watchtower, they don't care. Just listen. You just come and break that anyways. We don't care. You left something.
They have never changed the rule on this. When we read that article, that's still the way it is. That you have to tell the elders when you see a fellow witness committing a sin, which could be a crime. And instead of going to the authorities, this is where we break with the Watchtower on this issue. They would never be in the situation they're in today if they hadn't taken this stand of reporting to the elders or representatives, appointed representatives of the Watchtower, information that belongs to the authorities of the land. And the results have been staggering as far as negative. The reports on television and the newspapers and now on the internet it's true. Look at all the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that have programs that are talking about these things. The cruelty on part of the witnesses for the organization, because they support the organization, they even turn on their own family. One man has a program, and he has a young woman who's speaking about her mother. Her mother encouraged, because the girl was leaving the organization, her mother encouraged her to commit suicide and save God the steps of killing her at Armageddon if she left the organization. So how can an organization make us like this, turn us into something like this?
Well, they do it to many people, Barbara. Well, yes. Listen, you got a lot of attention with your cover story tonight on would you commit a crime for the Watchtower. I think people got an understanding now of that does take place in the Watchtower. But I want to thank you very much, Barbara, for coming on. We're going to move on to JW World News.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine. Yes, we only hope that for happiness on the part of those who have left the organization. They have not left any group that is worth staying with. Individually, many good people, but as an organization as a whole, very, very evil, and getting worse so with the members of the old organization are gone, and many of them had good ethics, but they would have sold their mother down a river, that old saying that years ago, for the organization, even the older group.
It's even worse now, Barbara. The Watchtower, I'm going to be covering that on my news tonight. It's even worse now, way worse than it was back then.
They're desperate.
Well, you made an impression on people tonight, and we appreciate you coming on, and we're going to see you in 2 weeks, and I'll be in contact with you. And don't you ever give in on the route. You're a real trooper, Barbara. We love you dearly, so keep cranking away.
I think we've got some people lined up for some neat interviews in the future. So,
Oh yeah, we do. We're working on Zalkin. We're still trying to get him on. So
that's right. He wants to do this. So, and some others. I'm just delighted hearing from them. Very interesting life experiences. Anyway, thank you, Rick, very much for letting me have my say.
You're a good woman. Don't you ever change, Barbara. We love you dearly. Keep cranking away at it. Thank you very much. All right. Well, that's Barbara Anderson. My goodness gracious. Isn't it great to have her on? Now, listen, if you like this program, if you really like this program, she comes on every 2 weeks. Why don't you like the program? Just like the program. Subscribe to the channel. If you're on Facebook, share it. Don't be inhibited. This news has to get out. This is very fascinating for Jehovah's Witnesses to hear this, especially people right on the fence. You're listening to a woman that has many years' experience as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. She was a Bethelite, her and her husband. She knows what she's talking about. And why would an 80-plus-year-old woman, I'm not going to say how old, but why would she want to come on? And, she wants to put her footprints here on the sixth screen. She wants people to know what's going on behind the curtains of the Watchtower. This is a valuable person, a valuable insider that can share so much with us. So if you like the channel, put a like on there, share it, become a subscriber, and then the message can get out. So we appreciate that. Well, we have JW World News coming up next right here on the Six Screens Telenetwork. So don't go anywhere. Stay in here with us. I think you'll find it very, very fascinating. Got a lot to talk about on the news tonight. So we're going to end this program now. We'll be right back with JW World News up next on the Six Screens Telenetwork.